Welcome to the APMM Virtual Conference 2021. We'd like to take a minute to highlight one of our excellent conference sponsors, Silpack Inc. out of Pomona, California. Silpack is your one-stop shop for all of your mold making and casting needs. Originally established in 1984, Silpack is a leading manufacturer and supplier of liquid rubber and plastic polymer systems for most mold making and casting applications. Used by industry professionals, artists, and hobbyists alike, Silpack provides everything you'll need from latex, silicone, and urethane RTVs to epoxy, polyester, and polyurethane resins. Silpack has over 35 years of expertise and can help you solve your most difficult molding and casting problems. Chances are, if you have a question, they'll have an answer. Find them online at silpack.com to see their selection of materials and support an APMM sponsor in the process. Go to silpack.com for more info. From everyone on the board of directors and your president, Jill Kennick, we are excited for you to join us for this valuable workshop. In today's session, Peter Mack, senior model maker at Steelcase, will be discussing the intricacies of managing large prototype builds, which come with their own special considerations. If you have any questions, Peter Mack, as well as an APMM representative, will be available in the chat. We encourage you to discuss the concepts and ideas presented with the other attendees. The chat will be open until the end of the hour, and after the workshop has completed, we will have an open Q&A for the remainder of the time. And with that, roll out.
Hi, welcome to the 2021 APMM Virtual Conference. I'm Peter Mack, Vice President of the APMM and also model maker at Steelcase. My presentation today is about managing large prototype projects. A lot of times, the scale of things that we work on, we make enough product to fill several of these 53-foot trailers. What I want to talk to you about is how we can develop a plan to package and ship securely all these prototype models. And how that might apply to even small projects. It's just a matter of thinking ahead to have a plan to package and ship things. Okay, so let's get started. Today I'm going to lead you through a project I did for VCON, which is the furniture industry's big trade show. I did this project back in 2018. And I'm not going to talk so much about the model making per se, but more about how I came up with the strategy and the plan to build and get it delivered to Chicago. I think the last week in April in 2018, I was tapped to lead the project to get their build from Grand Rapids to the show in Chicago. At that time, VCON, as in the furniture industry we all know, is the second week in June. It always is. No one seems to remember that. So it gives me basically 6 weeks to get all of this product, and I'm going to show you some pictures here in just a second of what it was involved. At Steelcase, we do a lot of things like, it's called dual pathing, where one part of the team is working on moving something to production, and in this case, my part of the team, or the people that were allotted to me, were getting prototype parts built, painted, and delivered to Chicago. In my first I guess a little bit more about dual pathing. I was assigned another project manager that was on the same team, and he solely worked on helping me get product to VCON, which I was grateful for because he could do a lot of things that weren't technically based but needed to be done, making phone calls, setting up things with vendors, and that type of thing. At the initial meeting for the project, which is called Mackinac, at the beginning of the project, and its code name was Ramen. at the very first meeting I went to, I met with the lead engineer and the project managers and whatnot, and they were kind of showing me what it was. Now, this project had been in the shop for about a year. I had not worked on it. I had heard about it, but I didn't really know much about it. I knew it was a furniture project. That was about it. So I went to this meeting and I'm like, show me what this thing is. What are we gonna do? And as well, I'll show in this picture here, this is 6 desks. There's a base here with an aluminum extrusion that moves up and down, and it's an adjustable height desk. But this is all cantilevered out. That top is probably 6 feet long, and there's 3 of them, glass panels. These are solid steel shelves. I wasn't responsible for the chairs, but if you look at this, it's probably a good 20 feet long. It's a big chunk of thing, and then there's the same thing on the opposite side. So I'll talk a little bit about the pictures as we click through them here. Here's another version. Again, the cantilevered desk, electronic height adjust, and then shelves. And you can see the panels are glass on the bottom, and then different screens. I was responsible for getting the screens made. They had never built the screens. They didn't know exactly how they were going to attach. We ended up with a lot of magnets and some glue and thread just for the show. If we go to the next picture, here's a very similar thing. You got to think about this in the showroom in Chicago. They're trying to show the different uses for each vignette. How a team type setup where one person does one thing, but they need to communicate. They just sit back to back. There's other ones where this would be like a meeting space. Again, I don't think this is adjustable. I think it's just at the standing height. But then there's a screen, and these are Corian covers on this. A little secret here, because these are cantilevered, and if we look back at the one with the six pack, those 6-foot tables, because they're cantilevered like that, you have to have, I don't know, 300-400 pounds of weight in the base of here, and there's a bunch of weight plates in there that we ship to each job, because otherwise it will fall down if you were to push on the outside of the table. Here's more like a reception type desk. The shelves, and this one is adjustable, but I think you can kind of get an understanding of all of the different parts. Here's one with no tables, but there was a monitor, and then this was a one-off piece. We still have this piece in our showroom with a woven leather screen that went around. This is actually in the showroom in Chicago. Sometimes we can't get pictures of things that I work on, mostly because it's prototype, a lot of times because there's no time to do that. So this gives you, here's another example. You can see how the cantilever comes out, and it's a PET cover that covers the screen, or the support on the bottom. If I'm going to go back to the first picture, and we'll talk about that. So that was kind of the width of the project. All those vignettes were what I had to build. I had basically 5 weeks to get them on a truck. My first question in the initial meeting was, did we know that we would be using a steel case transport truck, or would I need to be responsible for getting them, shipping them separately? This is a very common problem for us in the model shop, delivering big projects, knowing who's going to ship things. steel case transport. I don't know if you've ever seen a big blue steel case truck going down the highway. They always look really cool. But for us, it's not always the best way to ship something. You would think that we have our own trucks. I could just call one up and they would do that for me. They're very particular about where they go and what they do. So a lot of times I use common carriers to get things from point A to point B. Like I was saying, all the counterweights, the glass, which is always a challenge to ship. You had better really think about how you're going to package that. And then each one of these, everything disassembled into its base components once it was painted and whatnot. But I think the big challenges for a large project when you're working on something of this scale is I filled three whole 53-foot semis with product. Because of the additional packaging to protect everything has to have its own pallet. Otherwise you can't move it. So you have to plan about, and I started thinking about this the first week of the project, and ordered pallets, custom made to exact sizes. If you know, semi-trailer is 101 inches wide, most of them are. That means you can have a 50-inch pallet by whatever length you would like, but that 50 inches allows you to just squeeze with 1-inch clearance to just squeeze 2 pallets side by side. So that's the type of kind of forward thinking that you need to do. If you made, I want a 55-inch pallet, you're not going to fill your truck efficiently. So I had the shipping part, I'll get back to that. I guess the other thing for big projects like this is to expect change. This project changed several times. At the end, we had multiple changes with these tops. They were using like a clear birch plywood top. Any little flaw in it, they rejected them. We ended up doing those tops about 5 times. So that was 5 sets of 6 tops where we would redo them, we'd ship them to the showroom, they would be installed, the interior designers would say no, and then we would do them again. And that's just part of the job. I don't know if you've ever worked with interior designers. They're very different than industrial designers. While industrial designers can be just as stickly about very fine details, interior designers, because they're working for a public space and everyone to see, they will pick out flaws that you never saw before. So changes, another change that happened in this particular project was about 4 weeks in, the marketing people decided they needed to have a photo shoot. So I had one vignette completed and had to stop what I was doing, take that, finish it off, move it to a different area in the building and set it up for a photo shoot, which, that was 3 or 4 days out of my timeline that I wasn't expecting, that we just had to kind of overcome and accommodate them because that was just part of the project. So another concern that I have, particularly really big projects, and for a trade show project, you have to remember that this wasn't the only thing going to the show. There's probably 15 to 20 concurrent projects, so all the other model makers are working on those, trying to get them done. A lot of the work I had to do was outsourced in bits and pieces, people that did machining, people that did painting, working with glass vendors. Glass is always a pain. They run on their own timeline. They don't care that you have a timeline. So getting people to do glass, and particularly back painted glass, can be a challenge, and really need to think about how, when those are the first things you need to kick off. And you'll have to kind of look at your project and decide what are the hardest parts, start with that first, and then everything else can flow in behind that. For this particular project, we were using a bunch of new colors. So the powder coat hadn't been developed to the point that it was releasable to the public. So we had parts, these columns, the cap on here, the extrusion, some of these other components were powder coated in a color close to it. And then we wet painted everything to get the exact color. But you can imagine I've got 6 columns here. Each one of the vignettes has 1 or 2 columns. So there's just a lot of painting work to get that all done. Now, while Steelcase does powder coating, rarely can production accommodate special model shop projects. So we have vendors that we use that will do powder coating. They'll even do custom color powder coating for us. But you need to develop a relationship with those vendors. I can't stress enough how having a relationship with a vendor and treating them as part of your team can move your project along. I have several machine shops that I use. I try to split up my work throughout the course of the year so everybody gets work all of the time. The same with the powder coating vendors and people that do fabric and all of the little things that we do. Try and keep those people involved in Steelcase. While of course they're getting paid, and I expect, I have expectations that they're going to do really high quality work. Developing that relationship. I have relationships with some machine shops that I can literally send files on, late in the afternoon, and I've picked parts up at 5:30 in the morning if it was super hot. Now, that's not something you do all the time, but to have that ability and know that they're going to trust that they're going to get paid is a valuable asset. So after 5 weeks, it probably took us about 5 days to package everything. So like I said before, I had ordered pallets and I just had them sitting. I had painted on the sides of them where they went in the showroom. So every layout in the showroom is called, area 1, area Z1, whatever they are. So everything got loaded on its appropriate pallet. And then for us, we blanket wrap things because we can, and blankets are available, just like the knit shipping blankets. But you have to think in advance. If you can't use blankets, you have to order packing material, foam, cardboard, corner covers, all of that has to be available, because when it comes time to package it, you can't be, oh, now I need to go find one of these. So the first week of the project, I went out to the plants and found racks. I bet I collected up 200 shipping blankets, and then I put them in a big cart and pushed them back, got them back to the shop. But then I had to hide them because other people would come and steal my blankets, which I didn't want. I needed those blankets. I knew I was going to need them, but they would slowly start disappearing, and then I'd have to move the rack of parts somewhere else so that people wouldn't steal my stuff. The same with pallets. People will just come and take it. Oh, here's one about the right size, and they'll take it off a stack of, I had stacks of pallets this high, and they would just take one and it would go away. So I also have learned in the past to maybe order 1 extra pallet or 2 extra pallets, depending on the size of them, so that somebody's going to steal one. It took us about 4 days to get everything packaged up, and on, the 29th of May, we loaded 3 semis back to back to back, and they went to Chicago. We followed it along the next day. There was a team, the engineers, project managers, and myself and another model maker went to Chicago and started disassembling everything, taking care of all the packaging. We saved all of the packaging at the show and stacked it all back onto the pallets because this was all going to get repackaged and shipped to different places in the United States to display it at some of our sales showrooms, work life centers. So we saved a little time there by that we knew what it came on, we could repackage it. I went down weeks after the show to disassemble it, bring a banding machine and more foam and whatnot to disassemble, repackage, and then ship it out of Chicago to where it needed to go. So I hope that kind of gives you a little insight in what it takes to do this. It's really thinking in advance about the small things, pallets, packing materials, that kind of thing, and how you're going to physically move it. Do you have a relationship with a trucking line? If you don't, you need to find one. Find out what the costs are. I've done many projects where my timeline is so tight, I end up using like a FedEx, custom critical truck, which is insanely expensive, but I delivered things from Grand Rapids to Seattle, Washington in under 40 hours. That's just the price you have to pay if you're going to do things that way, if you're going to cut your timelines down to just absolute razor thin, it has to go this day. So I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of insight in how to do these little big projects. I think you could do the same types of things for small projects. The physical size of it isn't really that important. If you had a small model but it's very fragile, maybe it's best to spend the $120, $150 on a Pelican case, build the foam correctly so that if you know that it's protected. You know that once it leaves your hands, it's out of your control. So you have to do the best packaging you can. All right, well that sums up my presentation. Thanks for joining me. We're gonna move to the YouTube live chat and see if I can answer any questions that you might have. So thanks for watching.
And now on to the Q&A. If you haven't already, head over to the chat, either to your right if you're viewing on a desktop, or below if you're on a smartphone, and join the discussion with the presenter and your fellow model makers. When you are ready, or after the session ends, you can head to the APMM Zoom meetup for further discussion or general information from an APMM representative. This Zoom meetup will be open all day from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For future sessions, head back to the conference schedule page for dates, times, and the appropriate link for each session. And as you discuss, we want to thank the companies and individuals that have supported the APMM and our conference efforts with their donations after we had to postpone our in-person conference last year. Your support means a lot to this organization, and it helped make this conference a reality. Find the names of our amazingly generous conference donors on the screen now. Thanks for coming to this session. We hope you enjoyed it.